Alrighty, everybody, it is currently Wednesday, June 18th, 2025, and I'm coming at you live, and I'm coming at you live with some big announcements. I know we've had a lot of big announcement recently, but we are up to follower number 11 on the cast. We still got 4 ratings, but we're up to follower number 11. And more importantly than all of that, I want to give a shout out to my boy Luca and my boy Vincent Klein. These two dudes DM'd me on Instagram, and so I followed Vincent Klein until he DM'd me and was like, "Hey, I listened to the podcast. It was, I like Chris Woods. I like oral presentation. So this one it's an even more retarded." But he's this isn't what he said at all. But this is what I got from the message. Like, this is an even more retarded version of oral presentations. So it rules. He was like, "Yeah, I like it. It's funny. Let's go." And I looked at his Instagram account, and he like makes artwork and shit. And I was like looking through some of the artwork, and I did find one that I thought was pretty sick. It's like a picture of a minotaur, I think, in a cave or something like that. And this dude, and he didn't just DM me on Instagram. He also commented on the most recent podcast, which is the one I did about the Stone Age. And I forget where in that podcast I talked about how like I don't know where the name wetback comes from as like a slur for Mexicans because they don't sweat. I swear to God, you drive through like any rich suburb, especially in the summertime, you're gonna see 5,000 Mexicans, or you're gonna see an entire like small town of Mexicans working on like these various houses, in the rich part of the suburbs, and they don't not a single drop of sweat. I swear to God, I don't know how they do it. Like people are like, "Oh, Mexicans drink beer when they work." I don't even think they drink beer. I don't think they drink anything while they work. I've never seen one sweat before. And Vincent, the dude I was talking about with the art, he commented under that and he was Mexicans don't sweat. They're called wetbacks because they illegally entered the US by crossing the Rio Grande, getting wet in the process. And I just that's like the explanation, I guess, for it. I didn't look it up. I didn't verify it. I trust my boy Vincent. If I know anyone's got my back, I know Vincent's got my back. But just starting that out by being like, "You're right, Mexicans don't sweat, dude." I've done the studies. I've been in the lab. I've done the scientific studies. I've poured out the test tubes, dude. I've looked at the genetics. I've got the electron microscope looking at atoms and shit. I know Mexicans don't sweat. So I guess that's why they're called wetbacks, is because they went through the Rio Grande, which that would also be a very good name for like Cuban immigrants. Now that I think about it, because dude, those guys like those guys fucking surf like an old door from like Cuba to Miami. You know what I mean? They're on like a fucking on a rowboat, dude. They're like a Harvard crew team. Just but instead of like 6'4" like white guys who have raped multiple women, it's just a bunch of like 5'3" Cuban dudes just rowing on like a door from Cuba to Miami. So I wanted to give a shout out to Vincent, dude. Very, very funny, very good artwork. And I was also I was thinking about this for some reason. For some reason, it's stressing me out so much. So, like I said, he makes like the art and shit. And so I was gonna put a link to his Instagram account in like the description of this thing to so people could look at the art. But then I was like, that's kind of a very dick move to do, right? Like, it's kind of like very dickish to do that because it's not like I'm Joe Rogan, right? It's not like there's a million people listening to this. At most, it's just Vincent and Luca listening to this. And so I just thought it would be fun. It's just like a dick move to like little bro this guy, be like, "Yeah, I'll fucking put that out there for some of my followers to look at." What followers? That's not what I like wanted to do. I wanted to do it because I was like, this guy fucking rules, and I'm like very thankful that he's listening to this. But like, as soon as I started thinking about it, and I didn't DM him about it because like that's how socially awkward I am. Like I can't even message him through the DMs to be like, this might be like a mean thing to do. You know what I mean? But I probably will end up linking it down there just in case any more than 2 people listen to this and want to look at his artwork. It is very sick. I do like the oil stuff a lot. He's got like a picture of a rose here, and then he's got some other drawings that are kind of like I don't know. They kind of like look like kind of a cross between like those manga drawings, which I've seen very few of. The only time I've seen like manga drawings is in like when Wendigoon talked about the fucking, the spiral Japanese TV show. It's the only other time I've seen it. But it looks kind of like that and like a mixture of street art. And so it's, yeah, if that's what you're into, I do think most of it's pretty sick. And so I'll leave a link down to that below. Yeah, no, this guy does not need my help. But I'm still gonna do it because I'm appreciative. I'm not gonna leave a link to Luca's Instagram account because doesn't post anything, but shout out to him, dude. He does rule as well. Thanks for the kind messages on Instagram. It is kind of nice, just only having 2 listeners because I can like talk to them and be like, "Tell me exactly what you want to hear. Tell me precisely what it is you want to hear." And I didn't say that directly to Luca, but I was like, "How did you how did you find the thing?" And he was like, "Yeah, I just like looked something up and I found it." And then like the final DM he sent me was, "I be lost on half the shit these be about, but it's still entertaining." Dude, he does. I don't think he realizes how big of a compliment that is. That it's pure retardation, but it's still just entertaining enough for like 1 or 2 guys to listen to. And so shout out to both of those guys. Thanks for listening. Thanks for hitting me up on Instagram. Thanks for going to the Instagram in the first place. That's very, very kind of both of you. So I just wanted to give a shout out to those guys. And now that I'm doing that, now that I'm like exposing the fact that I'm like looking at my DMs, I feel like one person is gonna listen to this, like one internet goblin, because look, I'm not dissing Luca here, but I feel like to find this at this point, where it's at, you kind of have to be like trolling the depths. But he just said he looked it up and he found it. So I don't know. Maybe I'm out of my mind, but I do feel like this is, maybe to find this specific episode, you have to be a real, real internet goblin to be looking up US war rankings. So I imagine I'm gonna get shit on pretty soon. Oh, and the other funny thing, which might be the funniest thing about this whole Instagram DM fiasco in the first place is that so the dude Vincent that I was talking about, the dude who makes the art, like I followed him first and then he hit me up and he was like, "Hey, listen to the podcast. It was retardedly funny." That's not what he said, but that's like I said, that's what I'm taking from it. And so I looked at his Instagram and then I looked at the requests. Apparently people that don't follow you have to request to follow you on Instagram, which is just I get it if you're like Joe Rogan or Justin Bieber, but no one's hitting me. No one's the baddies aren't hitting me up, sending me pictures of their assholes and their tits and shit. You know what I mean? I'm not a married man anyway, so it wouldn't even matter if they did that. But I just thought it was so funny that Instagram was like, "Yeah, this guy's gonna be getting a lot of DMs. We got to set up a fucking request page for it." It's like, no, just I don't know if I can somehow change that, but I'll be checking the DMs a little more if anyone wants to hit me up or send me a picture of them in a Nazi uniform. Or whatever the people who listen to this podcast do. It seems like they're doing mostly good shit though, because Luca was a very chill guy, and Vincent's making that very sick art. So, yeah, I don't know. I didn't get Nazi vibes from either of them, but with a lot of the way I talk about stuff, not even the things that I talk about specifically, but just the way I approach them, I would not be surprised if there's if there's like a kid who thinks he's an Aryan, dressing up as a Nazi. A kid with black hair and brown eyes being like, just because he has white skin, thinking Hitler would love him or whatever. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case here. But we're not talking good about Hitler today. If we're gonna be doing anything, we're gonna be talking negatively about that guy. Not a good guy. Don't like him at all. He's a real son of a bitch. Just a real bad guy. A real jerk. You know. So we're gonna be talking bad about him today a little bit. And before we get it started, I wanted to just go over the wars that we're going to be ranking. So first of all, we got World War II. Obviously, it's it's the World War. It's the biggest one. It's kind of the one you got to start off talking about. And then we got World War One. Once again, kind of obvious there. And then we got the Vietnam War, the Korean War, the Civil War, Iraq, Afghanistan, the Gulf War, the Revolutionary War, the Mexican American War, the War of 1812, which that might get into the top 5 just based off uniqueness of name alone. I feel like just reading that list, it got kind of monotonous really quick. And then I got to the War of 1812 and I was like, fucking finally, I don't have to end, a phrase or a sentence with war. And then lastly, we got Grenada. And America, especially in the 80s and even now, when we really got the military industrial complex going, when Raytheon and Lockheed Martin really got into the White House, we've been doing a lot of these small invasions, and there's a whole ton of them, right? Like there's the U.S. involvement in like Libya, Somalia. And Somalia, I maybe might rank that one just because the name of the American invasion into Somalia is so sick, dude. It's Operation Gothic Serpent. I don't know who came up with that one. That one was just made up by a guy who like walked in a dark robe, just surrounded by like crows and ravens and shit, just squawking. And he walked into the Pentagon and he was like, "I got a name. Operation Dark Serpent, and then a fucking, lightning strike came out of the sky and he disappeared. That's a very, very sick name for whoever came up with that one. But we're not doing all of those small ones. I decided to go with Grenada because I feel like that's the most aesthetically pleasing one. Just look it up. It's kind of like a mini Vietnam, but just with all basically like Marines and Special Forces guys. It's very, very just aesthetically pleasing, very sick looking. And that is something we're going to talk about. Some people call it aura now, when something's aesthetically pleasing. I don't know, whatever name you want to call it, that is going to be probably the major deciding factor in in the ranking of these wars, right? Just like it was with the world of religions. Like it was just about like, how much do I fuck with like the surface level of it? We got a little bit into the theology of it, but it was just very surface level exploration of it. And so that's what this one's going to be too. We're not going to be talking about, especially with what Israel's doing nowadays, with them going hog wild, having their fun. A lot of people are questioning, you know, certain things that happened, before and during the course of World War II, and in Poland and Germany and that general area. A lot of people are asking, did that really happen? You know what I mean? It's like when your friend goes fishing and he's like, "Yeah, dude, I got a 12-pound bass. I just couldn't get my phone out in time." And you're like, "Really? I'm sure you caught a bass of some kind, right? I'm sure the bass was caught. I'm sure it was on the hook. You reeled it in, but was it that big? You know what I mean? Was there really that quantity of things going on? We're not going to be doing that too much. Just a little bit, just a touch here and there, especially when we talk about like the wars on terror, specifically Iraq and Afghanistan. We might go into it a little bit. Like, really? Is that really what was going? We really thought Saddam Hussein had nukes. That was really what was going on here. But I'm just talking about these, just in case like the CIA or someone in the White House is listening, because I feel like if you can get like the average dumb American's perspective on war, you know what I mean, and what really gets people going, like what you could do to motivate the U.S. populace to like really get behind a war that you're trying to do, and Iran and probably Ukraine, they're probably thinking about going to Ukraine a little bit now. They're probably like, it's like when you go to the store and you're like, "Ah, fuck, dude, we're out of milk. I got to go to the store to get milk." And you're like, fuck it, I might as well get bacon, you know what I mean, or Kool-Aid while I'm here. And I feel like that's what's probably going to happen if the U.S. really gets involved in Iran. If we do more than just like send a few planes over there to just suck Israel's circumcised dick. You know what I mean? We might, if we're getting involved in Iran, we're gonna get involved in Ukraine, and then maybe it's gonna be World War III. But if it's gonna be World War III, I want the U.S. military to know what I want in terms of aesthetics. So that's the main reason I'm doing this one. The main reason I'm doing it is just in case we get in Iran, don't give us like these gay ass fucking unit. Don't give us like digital desert camo. Give us like some cool ass like Vietnam fucking Born to Kill on our helmets and shit. Don't give us this gay. Don't give us this lame ass fucking shit. No one wants that shit. No one wants. You know, like you look at these modern military uniforms, and I'm sure they're like very good for what they do, right? They're very good at protecting them from bullets and shit, but it just doesn't have the aesthetic appeal that like World War II and Vietnam War uniforms have, like, right? Like the modern ones, they're like big and bulky and they have like a thing that covers your neck and shit. That's not what I want, dude. I want dudes like shirtless with fucking, M16s going into villages and shit and mowing people down. That's what I want. I don't want like some smart tactical shit. I want some very cool, aesthetically pleasing stuff. So that's why I'm doing this. Just to give the Pentagon, just to give whatever fucking, Rothschild's like Vanderbilt bloodline combination that's running the country, just to give those guys an idea as to what I want in terms of aesthetic in a war. All right. So we got, I don't know where to start really. I don't want to start from the beginning. I think we start with World War II. That was the first one on the list, so I feel like that's the one we kind of have to start with. And I do have some statistics about some of these wars. Not the type of statistics you're thinking of when it comes to World War II, just general statistics as to what was going on here. And so, World War II, 16 million Americans served in World War II, which that's fucking a lot, especially back then, dude. Like back then, I don't think people realize how much the population of like the globe has grown. Like there was probably 100 million people in America in World War II. It might have been even less, right during that time period. I'll look it up real quick. The population of America during World War II, because this is like it's insane. Like even now, this would be insane to have 16 million people serve in a war. And we weren't in it that long. We were only in that thing for 4 years. So that's I don't know. This doesn't make really any sense, but that's like 4 million people a year going on. So yeah, let's look this up. Okay, it was a lot more than I thought. It was about 140 million during the time, and at the beginning it looks like it was 130 million. So yeah, that's a that's a decent amount of people. I was off by about 40 mil, and that's the funny thing when people talk about like these massive populations or these massive numbers, like in statistics, like people will be like, "Yeah, India has a billion people." India doesn't have a billion people. India has a billion more people than the United States has. Like that's how that's how insane we're talking about here. And America's like the third biggest country in the world, and India has a billion more than that, which is I'm surprised it doesn't look more disgusting than it already does. I'm surprised there's not like more trash and human shit filling the towns and streets of that country. I would really expect it to be more. Like you look at New York City, and this is something that I feel like they're trying to change. Like I've seen some videos on like TikTok and Instagram, but like even the streets of New York City are like there's piles of trash just like all around New York City. Like they're trying to get New Yorkers to use trash cans, but still, there's like piles of trash, and that's probably like a third of the size of like New Delhi or Mumbai or like one of those fucking mega cities in India. So I'm surprised there's really not more. So it's and this is a thing. Like I'm going more towards Indians. I'm starting to fuck with the Indians a little bit more as I get into like, or I look into like Buddhism and like Hinduism a little bit more, and I'm starting to fuck with the Mexicans a little less, dude. The tides are changing, and I think the tides are gonna change. Universally. We just need like one very hot Indian chick and like one very hot Indian dude, right? Like now what's that guy's name? Kamal Nanjiani or whatever the fuck that guy's name. Get him out of there. Get like a Chris Hemsworth style Indian. There's a billion and a half of them. There's got to be like one Chris Hemsworth in there. Get that guy, bring him over here. You know what I mean? Like especially with Trump and Elon and all these tech guys trying to really get the whole thing going. If you really want to get that going, you're gonna need the Indians here, right? It's like if you want to start a watermelon farm or whatever, you're gonna need to get some Mexicans in there willing to pick those things. And that's what you need for the Indians. The Indians are just tech Mexicans. They're Texicans, dude. That's all the Indians are in America. In America, especially, they're just tech-based Mexicans. They just do grueling tech work, I guess. I don't really know how technology works at all, especially like computers and the internet and shit like that. But get like a Chris Hemsworth Indian, you know what I mean? Give him some steroids if you need to. Give him some Winstrol, some fucking, Anavar, some Tren if you need him to. Get him a little bit bulked up. They're not the they're not the most uh a muscularly advanced group of people. So give them some steroids and then get like a nice, I'm thinking like a Scarlett Johansson type of Indian. You don't want to go full Margot Robbie because here's the thing. If you try to go Margot Robbie with an Indian, you're going to end up falling short. So give us like a Scarlett Johansson type of Indian chick. And I think you could get, all the tech slaves you need. If you just did that, if you just did those two things. And that's my theory about everything, to be fair. I feel like that could really work here. That could really work in this situation, right? Like people talk about these incels, and these people like being radicalized into conservatism or whatever the fuck, which is the most insane thing I've ever heard in my life. Like, you don't really need to radicalize people into being conservative because conservative is like, it's kind of like the baseline, right? If that makes sense. It's kind of like conservative is just like the old way of doing things, but not really. Like, even in the American instance, like, they're like, look at these conservatives. America's becoming more conservative. It's just like people don't want their children's dicks cut off and they want to be able to raise a family, and everyone's like, they're becoming Nazi. They're becoming, the Mujahideen. They're becoming the Taliban. It's going to become the Handmaid's Tale or whatever. And no, we're just like these conservatives that they're talking about just want it to be like the 90s again, like 30 years ago. It's not like the Afghanistan where they're trying to go back to, the Islamic Golden Age in the year 700 AD. They're just trying to go back to the 90s, but that whole like movement is just based around like four hot blonde chicks wearing like those sundresses or those farm dresses or whatever they're called, doing TikTok videos and shit. So I don't think my theory is that far off, but you do kind of have to get the chicks on board, which is why you need a hot dude. You need a hot dude to be able to do it, right? Like that's why books are so big nowadays. It's just because the books are like hot to women. Like that's it. And so I'm kind of realizing you need the women on board now too. So that goes back to the whole trans thing. When I was talking about Hunter Schafer, we're gonna need a hot trans dude too, and I feel like that might be a little bit more of a difficult task, to find like a 6'4" chick that you can make into a dude. But hey, you'll do it. You'll find a way if you have to. To the trans people out there, and they're not known for finding a way. That's not a group of people known, exactly for pushing through the tough times. They're kind of known for when the tough times come, they just kind of give up. They're just, one person calls them sir, and they're like, "Well, I'm going to take 82 OxyContin tonight." Hey, if you want it to happen, you can make it happen. And this is just what we all need to do. It's aesthetics are important. People underestimate the importance of it. Aesthetics are important. Like you could have like the shittiest made house on earth, but as long as it looks cool, even just from the outside, as long as it looks cool from the outside, someone's gonna pay $1 million for it. And that applies to all things. So we're gonna start off with World War One, and we're probably gonna change up the rankings here a little bit. I don't even know how many I have, how many wars I have. There's maybe like 12. I can't count that quick. I'm the worst counter. Like we have sheep and stuff, and when you're like counting the sheep to make sure they're all there, I instantly lose track of it like very, very quickly. And so I don't think we're gonna eliminate any unless we need to, right? Like the Gulf War, that one might get eliminated, although it is pretty sick. But we're gonna start off with World War II. In World War II, I think we got to talk about the pros of it a little bit. 16 million Americans served during it. I think that's obviously a pro, right? We're talking like Joseph Stalin said, quantity has a quality in and to itself, or whatever the fuck that mustachioed freak said, whatever that Russian Mario said. That is kind of what he looks like. Now that I'm thinking about it, Joseph Stalin, he has the mustache and he has like those communist fucking like hats that they wear, like those military hats. He kind of looks like a fucking Bolshevik Mario. Mario Witz or whatever the fuck. All right, but anyway, World War II. So upsides, obviously most Americans served in that, and that was a war that Americans were really behind. I think it was the last of those wars. Like maybe Afghanistan, you could say that they were behind, but even in like 2001, which is when we invaded Afghanistan, like even then, Americans were starting, the attention span was starting to go down a little bit. Not during World War II. Like World War II was like the radio. That's all they had. Like that was their version of TikTok. And the radio, that's still like very long form type of shit. A few people had TVs, but it was mostly just radio. And so, that's probably why it got backed so much, but still, hey, like we're not talking about the context here. We're just talking about how sick the war was. So 16 million Americans, that's obviously an upside. Two-front war is just you have to consider like how sick that is, right? That America was already, you know, pretty much the only people, right? Like 30 million Chinese people died fighting the Japanese in the Pacific, but still, that really, you know what I mean? It's not the same as what the Americans were doing in the Pacific. So America was like fighting the Pacific, not basically by itself, but like pretty much by itself. I'm not shitting on the Chinese here, but they weren't doing a whole ton. You know what I mean? They were a pretty fractured nation at the time. They weren't really doing the same type of fighting America was. So America basically fought the Pacific all by itself. And then, a few years down the line, and we were fighting in, I think, Italy and Northern Africa in 1943, but we didn't really get too involved in Europe until 1944, and then we won the war in 1945. So I feel like just that I don't know if it puts it at number one though, right? Because other people can like kind of take credit for what happened there, right? Like the British will be like, we fought off the Germans as well. We did it too. And it's like, no, you didn't. You didn't do it like the fucking Americans did it, dude. Like America, we were like, all right, you guys, you little fucking, European pussies are getting your ass whooped over here. Let's show you how you do it. And then we threw like 20,000 like 19-year-olds at a beach in fucking France. We stormed that shit and we marched straight to Berlin. And then like the Pacific, that as a whole, like the Japanese are a very, very honorable enemy, despite despite the fact that in China they were like doing mass killings and like torturing people to death constantly. In the Pacific, they were pretty honorable enemy. You know what I mean? And it was almost kind of like a Viet Cong type of thing where they would like blend in with the forest and shit, and we still kicked their asses. But they were a very honorable enemy, very like old school type of thing. Like they were the last really old school like country like that. Like I guess you could say the USSR to an extent is kind of like they had like that whole, serve your queen ideal, but instead of a queen, it was like serve communism, basically. So you could say that they were kind of similar to the Japanese at that point. And China's kind of got that whole thing going on now, but maybe that's like a communist thing. But like the Japanese were like, they believed that their emperor was like a god. And they would just put the fucking like the what do they call it? I think they're called bonsai charges was like a thing that the Japanese did where it's like if they were like fuck dude, we're fucked. They would just like put their bayonets on and just sprint at the enemy full speed. And it was always like a 10-to-1 casualty ratio. Like for every 10 Japanese people that died, like only one American would get killed. And they would do it with citizens too. I'm trying to think of I heard about this recently. I want to say it was on Okinawa. It was like this combination of like 10,000 Japanese soldiers and citizens, like, and a lot of them weren't armed, just sprinted at the Americans full speed. And I have to respect them for that. I have to respect them for just this lawnmower of carnage that's in front of them, right? Like machine guns, fucking grizzled Marines and shit. And they were just like, nope, everyone get on board, let's fucking go. And so I feel like the Japanese as an enemy are very sick. Same with the Nazis, right? Like the entire Star Wars thing, like the most popular franchise of the 70s, and really, it, I'm sure if you look at the numbers, it's probably one of the most popular franchises of all time. Like like the Empire basically was based on like Germany and a little bit on Japan. And so I feel like that just makes the Germans so much more sicker. It's like I wouldn't reveal that fact if I was George Lucas, right? Like if I wanted people to hate the Nazis, I'd be like, no, the Empire, they're not based on the Nazis because that just makes them look so much more sick, right? Because think about it, like who would be like the one-to-one comparison? It's like Hitler is Darth Vader, and it's like, well, I don't, that doesn't make me hate Hitler more. It doesn't. I'm not gonna say it makes me like him more, but it doesn't make me hate him more, you know. And so I feel like they're just a very sick enemy to fight against. Like the two people that America really fought against, and I'm sure we fought against like I don't know, like Turkey. I'm trying to think of who were the Axis powers: Romania, Hungary, and I think there were a couple others. That does dock the points a little bit. That does dock a few points. It's like what we were fighting gypsies. We were fighting. It's like what were the gypsies gonna do against the Americans in World War II? Like disassemble our fucking machine guns and take all the copper out of them? Like I don't. I don't know. And the Hungarians, they're even worse than the gypsies. They're just like lazy gypsies, basically. And so I think that does dock a couple points, but I do think World War II, as of right now, and obviously personal preference will play a part in this. I do have to say outright of this list, I think Vietnam is probably my personal favorite, but I feel like we have to give the nod to World War II just because it was the second most Americans. It had like the second most amount of casualties of any American war, and really the first most if you think about it. Because I don't want to get too into the Civil War right now because that's not the next up on the list, but they include the Confederates in that, and it's like, yeah, I guess technically they were Americans, but like, I don't know, not not really, right? It's like if you got in a fist fight with your dad and you like beat your dad's ass, and it was like, yeah, the family got in a fist fight and we won, and it's like, like I, I don't really know. It's kind of a weird spot to be in, and so depending on who you ask, World War II is number one, or the Civil War is number one. And also the Civil War, like most of the World War II deaths were like fucking chart. All those guys went to Valhalla, whereas the Civil War is like most of those guys like died shitting themselves on a cot somewhere. Right? They were just like on a stretcher being carried by four other dudes while like their asshole got turned inside out by diarrhea. And so I feel like for that reason, World War II, not just because of like the perspective of like it did have more American casualties, right? Because they're counting Confederate casualties in the Civil War, and it's like they also died for the most part in a lot sicker ways. And I'm sure there was like a big number of malaria deaths in the United States military, especially in the Pacific, but I don't know. And the other thing about World War II is like we were just so fucking dominant, dude. Like as a power, like Europe was getting like completely shit on by everyone else, right? Like even Russia was getting pretty shit on. Like the Battle of Stalingrad or the Siege of Stalingrad lasted for like 4 fucking years, right? Like their biggest cities were getting run up on by the Nazis. Meanwhile, in America, like the worst thing that would happen is like you don't get milk for the week. Like you know and it's the other thing is like Pittsburgh produced more steel than like all the Axis powers combined. it was just so sick. They like aesthetically, just aura farming, pure. I feel like aura's kind of going out of style in terms of like the social media lingo. So I want to get that out of the way right now. But we were just aura. It was just pure. We had boats that were supposed to make concrete, but we were making so much concrete that we turned these boats that made concrete into boats that made fucking ice cream, and we would just pull up on an island where like the Japanese were like hunkered down eating fucking rat meat. They were slurping down rat tails as noodles and shit. Just munching on flies or whatever. And America pulled up and we were like, "You want strawberry or chocolate? Or you can do Neapolitan." It was like, you know, they were like the Japanese were getting like yelled at by their commanders, like, "This is the last stand. If we lose this battle, America wins it all. We have to fight against them." And we were like, America was like, "Yeah, you can get a swirl if you want. You want a cone? Do you want that dipped?" It was like a fucking Dairy Queen on a boat just pulled up while the Japanese were hunkered down in their mud holes or whatever. It's just very sick, the entire thing we did. And also, D-Day and America's involvement in like Western Europe and France like that. We just won the war in a year basically, and people are like, "Oh, well, the Soviets got there first." And it's like, yeah, because we distracted them. We were so powerful that the Nazis are like, "Dude, fuck Russia. Why did we give a shit about Russia in the first place? It's just a giant like frozen tundra, right? Even like the USSR, it had all those countries in it, but like it was still just like wheat fields and tundra, and they were like, "Fuck, we got to go fight the Americans." And so the Nazis got distracted, and so that's how technically the USSR was able to be the first to Berlin, but I don't know if that really counts. And so I think for that reason, just the amount of aura America had, we have to put it at number one, right? Just people, sir, everyone was backing it, everyone was on board with it. It wasn't like Iraq where it went on for 20 years and everyone was like, "Jesus fucking, can we get this one over with? Can we just get it done?" Yeah, I think for that reason it goes at number one. And then we have number two on our list, which is World War One. People always talk about like America's involvement in World War One. They were like, "Yeah, not that many Americans died. 4.7 million Americans served, and 116,000 died. So that's not like a insignificant number." And obviously, this is all about aesthetics, and so I have to talk about some of the sick aesthetics of World War One. I mean, just look up trench raiders. Just Google trench raiders. Those weren't Americans doing that, and so this isn't like a point in favor of the Americans, but like those old school fucking gas masks, and they would basically dress up like Arabs, right? Like they would be dressed up in like robes and shit and have like cloth wrapped around their face, which is it just does look sick, right? Like ISIS ISIS like looks sick. Same with the Taliban. The Taliban looks very cool. Like, and that's what America kind of had going on in World War One. It wasn't like Vietnam level, where it was like dudes were riding on their helmets and shit. It wasn't like that sick, but it was still very sick, like the uniforms and stuff. And some of them were pretty gay. Like it was like that transitionary period between old school warfare and modern warfare. And so there were some dudes that were dressed up as like cavalry or whatever, or like how those Canadian cops dress up, like the Mounties or whatever they call them, where they have like those ridiculous fucking hats and those boots that like go up to their knees like they're a fucking hooker or something like that. Like that is how some of the people dress, but they did look very sick. And also the World War One like National Museum is in Kansas City, and so I feel like for that's part of the reason why it kind of gets a tip in America's favor, in my opinion, because I live near Kansas City, and I've been to that place a few times. It's a very sick museum. Like they have this whole like field of poppies, and for every like one poppy on the field, it's like 100,000 people that died in World War One, and it's just and it's like it's kind of like in the ground a little bit, and then you go up on this glass platform and you look down on it, and then the even crazier part about it is they have like this exhibit that's supposed to, I don't know, like replicate World War One in a way. It's like super dark, and there's like replica trenches with like soldiers in them that you can look at, and just like over the loudspeaker, it'll be people be it'll be like a dude, like a letter a dude wrote to like his fucking girlfriend who was probably cheating on him. And the one thing I remember from it, and I think I was in like Catholic school when we went here, and so this is why I remember it. But he was like, "If hell is real, it's not filled with fire, it's filled with mud. The mud consumes us, it takes our bodies and it rots them when we're alive." It's like I'm in first grade, like listening to this shit. But it is very sick, especially when I talked about, in this, America's involvement was only a year. Even though 100,000 Americans did die in the war, it was still only a year. And so you don't get that much shit out of it, right? Like it wasn't like Vietnam where went on for 15 years and like the way the soldiers like dressed and interacted with the media like developed over time. It was like no, it was like a fucking just a year. Some guys went over there, 100,000 of them died. They dressed pretty sick, like those old school gas masks. Just something about them is so fucking sick. I don't know what it is. It makes you look. It's almost like a knight's armor, right? Like it completely covers your body. It's like what the fuck is under there? Is there like a demon under there or some shit? I feel like that's why it's so cool looking, especially to me. But it's, involvement was very limited. And it wasn't like America didn't fight like how the Germans or the Russians, or I guess not the Russians, but like the Western Front. It wasn't like that. It wasn't like we were just sitting in trenches and then like occasionally coming out for like a fucking just a sprint on someone. Like we got there when there was like tanks and shit and people weren't using horses as much. And so I feel like for that reason, I'm looking at the list now. I'm gonna put it at number 4. I think it could get up to number 3, but I think for now World War One goes at number 4. And also another very sick thing that's kind of a reference to Kansas City, I guess, a little bit in World War One. I'm talking about wars like they're fucking movies. I'm talking about World War One like it's fucking, you know, Avengers Endgame or whatever. I was like, did you know Captain Marvel made a cameo in Captain America One? It's kind of crazy. That's how I'm talking about World War One. But look, like I said, it's aesthetics. That's how I'm looking at it. And if you want to get the American people on your side during a war, kind of make it like a movie. You know, we're dumb. We're all we're all very stupid. All we do is consume media all day. You know, so if you want to get us on its side, like don't make some grand moral argument as to why America needs to be involved in Ukraine. Make it like make it sick. Put out like put out videos on Instagram Reels of dudes dressed in like the sickest fucking uniform you've ever seen, and then you'll start to get Americans on your side. But like I was talking about aesthetics, references to Kansas City and World War One. There was this guy, Blackjack Pershing, and they called him Blackjack because he was I don't know if he was a general. I think he was like maybe a few stars general. I don't know how many fucking stars this guy had, but I don't know. Doing a Yelp review of a general. That would be funny if that's how like they promoted generals. It would like all the soldiers would fill out a Yelp review of like stars and shit. But anyway, this guy Blackjack Pershing, they called him Blackjack because he led like an all black unit, and I think it was like a tank unit or something sick as fucking hell like that. And this guy, just something about people putting aside like their differences in war is just there's something very very cool about that. Like if you've ever seen the movie Blood Diamond, Leonardo DiCaprio, he's like this South African mercenary, and this is like the 90s, right? And he talks about like there's no apartheid in the foxhole or whatever the fuck he said. And just something about that is so sick, dude. It's like we're fighting the fucking enemy, dude. We're trying to crush the Germans right now. I don't care what fucking color you are. Get in that tank and show them what for. And I don't know. I think that's very sick. And that'll also play a little bit into the Civil War. And then number 3 on the list, not in terms of ranking, just the third on the list, is the Vietnam War. And like I said, this is just a personal favorite, right? Like I really love Apocalypse Now, and I really love Tropic Thunder, and like I'm a comedy movie guy. I like comedy movies, but I don't even know if I like it because it's a comedy movie. I think I just really, really like it because I love the Vietnam War. Like the Vietnam War is it's just something about it, dude. Just dudes trudging through the jungles. Like it was this combination of like old school and new school at the same time. The fucking helicopters. Have you seen We Are Soldiers or We Were Soldiers or whatever it's called with Mel Gibson? When the fucking guy's singing like on the cold, cold ground and the fucking helicopters are like coming over the hill and like they're getting ready to show the Viet Cong or the, whatever fucking army we were fighting at that point. We're getting ready to show them what for. And it's just, Vietnam has the aesthetics to it, right? I think Vietnam is more aesthetically pleasing than World War II. And I don't know. I think it's just because it's like a purely American thing, you know, to have a war in Vietnam that doesn't really concern you in any way, shape, or form. And the other thing about the Vietnam War is people are like, oh, America lost the Vietnam War. You guys pulled out. You need to fundamentally understand at least like what the official reason for the Vietnam War was. Obviously, like there's the theories and conspiracies around it, which might be true, might not be true. I don't know. I haven't looked into them too much, but like the official reason was to stop the spread of communism in Asia, and that's what they did, right? Like people. you look at it as like, oh, well, we fucking pulled out before the Viet Cong were completely eliminated. And it's like, we don't need to eliminate the Viet Cong. We just need to like make them weak enough for communism to not be, the system of government and economics in Vietnam. And that's what we did, right? Like it's the whole, there's a McDonald's in Ho Chi Minh Square. Like that's the reason America won the Vietnam War. We won it because they are capitalist now, right? Like they'll say they're not. They'll be like, "Oh, and then they'll translate it and they'll be like, "We're a socialist country." And it's like, "No, you're not, dude. Vietnam is the most it's the most they do have an air of socialism to them. They do have like a bit of that, the individual doesn't matter. It's about like the population as a whole, but I don't know. I might credit that more to Buddhism than I do to communism. And so we won that war. I don't care what anyone says. We won it. Like the kill to death ratio was like 10 to fucking 1. And that obviously was inflated a little bit. Like some guy would stab a baby with a bayonet and they'd be like, that guy was Viet Cong. that brutal soldier there, that evil enemy that you just killed. He was part of the Viet Cong, dude. I saw him wearing a helmet. I know he had an AK-47. It's like a dead child on the ground, just in a diaper with its fucking head bashed in. They're like, that fucker. I saw him in there. I saw him in the woods planting claymores and shit. They use him in the tunnels. That's what they use the babies for. A lot of the people, they think just because a baby can't walk yet, it can't be in the Viet Cong. So obviously, the numbers are a bit inflated, but it was still like it was insane how many, you know, Vietnamese communist guerrillas. I'll just call them communist guerrillas as a whole because that's what they all were. Like all the times that these communist guerrillas tried to fight America on even ground, it wasn't even close. Like the Tet Offensive. If you've ever seen, I'm trying to think, it might be Platoon or Full Metal Jacket. I can't remember, but it's one of those. And they're in the base and they're just like chilling and it's like Christmas time and they're having a grand old time playing cards or whatever. And the Vietnamese, the guerrillas try to come in there and fuck them up. And it's like this was like a complete surprise attack because Tet is I think it's a Buddhist holiday. It's like a Vietnamese Buddhist holiday to celebrate the Lunar New Year or something like that. And so the Viet Cong basically were like, yeah, we're not going to attack you guys. We're going to be too busy celebrating Tet. Like they told the Americans that. And that is, we should have realized they were lying at that point. You don't think of the Asians as being sneaky like that, you know? They're not, there might be a few Asians and, they might wear very small hats and have very large noses, but you don't think of the Asians as doing, those kind of like sneaky tactics, but they did. And so this was like a complete surprise attack on like every American base all at once. It was like the biggest, most coordinated attack that the guerrillas put together during the Vietnam War. And we didn't even fucking flinch at it. Like we completely, no matter what anyone tells you, America completely dominated the Vietnam War. And it wasn't even like, yeah, at home, in America, support for the war was wavering. They ruined countless people's lives. They give they gave thousands and thousands, maybe millions of young men PTSD and stole them away from having any chance at a normal life. But I mean, we dominated. We fucked them up. And one of the points I have to take away from Vietnam, killing a child with a bayonet, that's not a point away from Vietnam. That's just, hey, that's war, dude. We were just going Japanese on them. A point I do have to take away is that the whole reason that it started, the reason that America was able to be like, okay, we need to go into Vietnam was because of it was called like the Gulf of Tonkin incident. And it turned out that that was like complete bullshit. But the same thing happened in World War One, where I think it was the sinking of the Lusitania, or maybe it was the Spanish-American War. I can't fucking remember which one it was. Maybe it was the Spanish-American War, but it was just like some complete fucking bullshit that some guy made up, right? Like the sinking of the Lusitania. Like I said, I can't remember which war it was. I think it was the Spanish-American War. Now that I'm really thinking about it, but it was like this boat, and they were like it was sailing around the Gulf of Mexico somewhere, like around Cuba, which Spain controlled at the time, and it sunk. And all the journalists, all these fucking, warmongers, which I don't know, I guess America's just always been full of warmongers. They were like, the Spanish sunk the Lusitania. Then they found that like the Lusitania sunk because there was like a coal fire on board. Like that's why it sunk. Like the fucking engine exploded and it just sunk. Right? But they blamed it on the Spanish, so I don't know. I don't know. False flag. I don't know. We're not taking that into account here, right? Like I said, we're not going too deep into the fucking reasons behind the war, but whether it was good or not. We're just talking about aesthetics here. In Vietnam, like I was saying, especially with like the helmets, like dude, fucking like in Forrest Gump when a dude would have like a helmet with like cigarettes and playing cards, and like if you've ever seen that clear bottle on the helmets and you've wondered what that's for, that's mosquito repellent. And just like they would write on the helmets, black power or whatever the fuck. Just the writing on the helmets is, I think, a major point in Vietnam's favor in this, right? Like I said, we're not talking about the fucking, you know, the tactics behind it or whatever. We might talk about that a little bit with Vietnam, but we're not talking about all that shit too much. We're talking about how sick they looked and like the fucking those flak jackets that they had on, like a shirtless dude, and a flak jacket's like a, you can kind of think of it as like a precursor to a bulletproof vest. Like it's just so fucking sick looking, right? Like Tug Speedman in Tropic Thunder. Tell me that guy doesn't look sick as fuck. Tell me that's not one of the sickest looking guys you've ever seen. And I think Rambo wears one, like he's shirtless, but he has like a flak jacket on over. It's just very, very sick looking. Like the whole thing they had going on. The M16 rifles, very sick looking. And so I think for that reason, we're gonna be putting the Vietnam War at number 2. And obviously the tactics weren't the most sound. Like we were trying to fight like the Viet Cong, like they were the Germans or the Koreans or whoever the fuck we had fought previously. We were like going in. We were basically like at the beginning of World War One, right? Like I said, it's the difference between like conventional warfare and modern warfare. It's like the transition period between the two is what World War One was. And so they would like march dudes like in a line, like it was the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, whatever, and they would just get gunned down by machine guns or whatever. And that's kind of what America was doing, especially at the beginning of the Vietnam War. Like we didn't have, I've done an episode about the Rhodesian Bush War. Like those guys really, really understood how to fight a guerrilla force, and also it's completely different because the Rhodesians were fighting the Zimbabweans, and they all lived in the same country basically. It was more like fighting an insurgency than it was, they call it Africa's Vietnam. It's not at all like Vietnam in any way, shape, or form. I don't know how anyone got that idea. I think it's just similar because there was like helicopters and dudes with machine guns fighting dudes in the woods with AK-47. Like that's the only similarity between Rhodesia and the Vietnam War. But America, we eventually did evolve our tactics, and that's where like the helicopters come into play, right? Like the air cavalry and shit like that. So eventually did adapt, and we did end up winning the war. I don't care what anyone says. It's we didn't even try to fight it like a conventional war towards the end, and we won it. So hey, it's number 2. Suck my dick. It's my ranking. If you want to make your own, do it. I think Vietnam might be number 1 for some people, just because it's so synonymous with like American culture and like the shifting tides of American culture and shit like that. So I feel like for that reason, Vietnam goes number 2. It's so American. It's so aesthetically pleasing. Everything about it. Fucking Apocalypse Now is sick as hell, dude. I don't like Full Metal Jacket that much. I'm gonna be honest. Stanley Kubrick, I'm against war. It's like, okay, dude, then you signed up for the military. Like when the guy, the dumbest scene in that entire movie is the main character, whatever. I think his name's Joker. He has like the peace sign pin on his vest, and then on his helmet he has "Born to Kill." And the commander comes up to him and he's like, "You got "Born to Kill" on your helmet, and you got a peace sign on your chest. What kind of sick joke is that?" And fucking Joker, this war photographer, is like, "I think it says something about the duality of man, sir." And it's just like, dude, what the fuck? Because I like Stanley Kubrick, like 2001: A Space Odyssey, The Shining. I'm trying to think. Eyes Wide Shut. I think it's pretty sick. I love a lot of his movies, but that movie's just, it's so boring and gay and preachy. I just don't like it that much. I just really, really don't like it. I do like Apocalypse Now though, because Apocalypse Now, they were just like, yeah, we're not gonna fucking figure it out on all our own. We're just gonna make a sick looking movie, and then we're gonna copy the plot of Heart of Darkness because it's kind of similar to what's going on here. And so I don't know. For that reason, I think I like Apocalypse Now significantly more. I like Platoon as well, but that also has like a little bit of the gayness in it of just being like, which side are you going to choose, son? You got two sides in this war. And it's like, no, I'm not going to choose either side in this war, right? I'm not going to go with Willem Dafoe and be like a chill guy who smokes weed and doesn't fight the war. And I'm not going to go with that other guy who had all the scars on his face and shit. I'm just going to try to not die. I think that's what I'll be doing in my time in Vietnam. I'm not gonna, make any new political alliances or anything like that. I'm just gonna make sure I don't fall into a punji pit and have a fucking spike stab through my femur. I'm not, you know. So Vietnam War, just very interesting, very convoluted. But it wasn't so convoluted? The Korean War. And Korea, this is a sleeper pick. I think they call it the Forgotten War, but it's just it was very sick, right? And I think the main thing that makes the Korean War so fucking sick, for one, Douglas MacArthur. Like if I did an episode recently, I can't or not recently, sometime in the past about maybe Roman von Ungern Sternberg. Maybe it was that episode. Russ, the Russ episode. Maybe it was that one. But I talked about how in South Korea to this day, there's like these shamans or like priests basically that will like dress up like Douglas MacArthur and like pretend that his spirit is inhabiting them. And the reason they do that is because they view him as like a god of war. Like that's how fucking sick Douglas MacArthur was. The gayest thing he ever did was like leave the Philippines in a submarine that was kind of gay. It would have been sick if he like stayed there and rallied like a guerrilla force to fight the Japanese. And because this is I'm talking about World War II right now in this story with Douglas MacArthur, but it would have been very sick. And the Koreans hate the Japanese too, which is probably why they love Douglas MacArthur so much. Because Douglas MacArthur was like, that guy probably thought we should have dropped more nukes on Japan. He was like, just turn. He was like the original, turn that shithole into a parking lot. Right? Like in the early 2000s, when people would talk about like Afghanistan and Iraq, they'd be like, turn that fucking place into a parking lot. That's how. That's how Douglas MacArthur probably felt about fucking Japan and North Korea, because that's what the Korean War was all about. It was the capitalist South Korea backed by America and, you know, uh, the Commonwealth of Nations, basically, like the British, the whole thing they had going on, Australia, New Zealand, all those guys, and I'm sure there was a few other people. And I think the Japanese were like, yeah, dude, you guys dropped a few nukes on us, but hey, look, that was fair enough, so we're gonna help you guys fight the Koreans now, and we really hate the Koreans. And so I feel like that's a point in favor in the Korean War of it being very sick. But I think another thing that makes it super duper sick is the what's it called? Like the Incheon offensive. And Incheon is a town in South Korea. And so basically the North Koreans were like completely fucking up. I think both American forces and Korean forces, and they like basically had it completely surrounded. And there was like this one little town, like this one tiny little fucking like seaport town in South Korea that was still like able to fight off the North Koreans. And America went in there and we fucking like you can look at there's like videos of it of like how much America fucked up the North Koreans during the landing at Incheon. I'll try to link it down below in the description, but and we basically turned the entire tide of the war at Incheon. Sorry, I'm googling the landing at Incheon right now, but it basically turned the fucking tide of the war, and we pushed all the way up to the border of where the current border of North Korea. I almost called it North Carolina for a second, but the modern border of North Korea and China, and we pushed like right up to there in like fucking 2 months or whatever. It was like so quick how quickly we pushed up. Like the fucking capitalists, the South Koreans, the Americans were completely surrounded on all sides. It was just like this one tiny little fucking city, and we just pushed all the way up to the border. And up there is when Douglas MacArthur was like, all right, time to drop some more nukes. Douglas MacArthur, he was like, just nuke the entire border. I think it's the Yellow River, which is just so funny. It's so funny that there's a river in Asia called the Yellow River. It's like that would be like if there was a fucking river in India called the Shit River. Like the human shit river in India. That's the equivalent of the Yellow River in Asia. But I think that was the river, and we pushed them all the way up, and then they kind of pushed down, and that's where the modern boundary of North and South Korea is nowadays. Is where the Koreans or the North Koreans pushed their way back down to. And another thing that was very cool about the Korean War is it was like jet dogfights, right? I think the American plane was the F-86 Sabre, which is a very cool one. I can't remember if I talked about it during the Cold War aviation episode, but it's a pretty sick looking plane, right? It's got like these weird wings that like swoop backwards, and it has like it's not like a modern jet fighter where or it has like an engine like, on the wings, like, the engine's in the middle of it. It's a very sick looking plane, and it didn't have missiles or anything because this was just after World War II, right? Like, they didn't have the same, air-to-air missiles, air-to-ground missiles that they had during, the Vietnam War and, obviously all the wars after that, and so it was just, like, jets dogfighting each other, just pulling, like, fucking 90 Gs, right? Just trying to shoot each other out of the air, and so I do like dogfighting a lot. I do think that's very sick, but the length of the Korean War, it was very short, and, like, the most major lasting impact of the Korean War was MASH, and my dad loves MASH, and I don't know, maybe it's because my dad I've sat with him and watched, like, fucking 90 hours of MASH. I watched so much MASH in my life. It's I just don't like it that much. I don't know. And it's one of those old school shows too where it's in high school, I had this class called History Through Film, and one day the teacher decided to show us the movie Airplanes, which is like a comedy movie from like the 70s or whatever, and he's like, "This is the funniest movie I've ever seen in my entire life, dude. You guys are gonna love this. It's edgy, it's crazy, it's got everything. Look, hey, don't tell your parents I'm showing you guys this one." And it's like, it's like not edgy at all. It's like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar flies a plane, and like, somehow that's an edgy joke. I don't know. I don't understand it, and I feel like I look at MASH kind of the same way, where it's just like I don't, I don't, I don't get the jokes. Oh, but it's almost like listening to a Southern person talk. You know what I mean? Where a Southern person will be like, that girl's like a raccoon tail after a flick in the stream. Like that's how I feel when I'm watching MASH. I'm like, I just don't get it at all. I don't understand what they're saying almost. It's almost like watching Shakespeare. That's how dumb I am that I'm like, yeah, MASH is like watching Shakespeare. It's like, fucking what are these weird words they're using? It's like they're just not using TikTok words. Yeah, they haven't used fucking the Rizzler once in this entire show. I don't even know what the fuck they're talking about. Like that's how I watch MASH. And so I think the Korean War will put it I think at number 5 for now. It Like I was saying, World War One might get bumped up to number 3. If anything, the Korean War is gonna get bumped down to like number 6 or 7 or something like that. Because our next one on the list here that I think is probably a more suitable number 3 is the Civil War. And this is one of those ones where it's just like I don't like that old school warfare style. And I think and this is just one this is kind of where the Civil War might shine in this ranking. It's just purely aesthetics, right? Because there was like, I guess there was like some sick, like fucking naval battles and shit. And there was like the Confederate submarine, like that famous thing. And so I feel like that's like the kind of the cool part about the warfare of the Civil War, but everything about it else, it was just kind of, it was just kind of gay, right? Like the other cool part about it is Gettysburg, right? When they came down off that hill and all the dudes just like charged full speed into the fucking Confederate soldiers down there, like that's pretty cool. And then you have Stonewall Jackson who would just like fucking send his men into battle and then like on the back of his horse just like survey the fucking battlefield, right? Like some Julius Caesar fighting Vercingetorix type shit. So that's very cool, but he died in like 1863, like 2 years before the war ended. And then Robert E. Lee came in and it's like, yeah, he was a good general, but like he just wasn't sick like Stonewall Jackson was. Like Stonewall Jackson was doing like some Napoleon Bonaparte type shit. You know what I mean? Where he would like wear a weird hat and then just go into battle with his men. And he was severely autistic. That's another thing about Stonewall Jackson. Like there's this story about him because he studied at West Point. And I think Robert E. Lee studied there too. But one of his commanders, one of Stonewall Jackson's, commanders at West Point, was like yelling at him, and he's like, "You're gonna stand here and you're gonna fucking salute until I tell you not to." And so he like went and he saluted in the place where the commander told him to, and then the commander just like forgot about it and came back the next day, and Stonewall was still like standing there saluting, just like pure autism, but like the Napoleon Bonaparte type of autism, where he's just obsessed with this fucking thing. And so I feel like that's a point in favor of the Civil War, and it's iconic. It's a very, very, very iconic war, like World War II, like World War One, like the Vietnam War, and it's still like there's still those people you'll still drive past like a plywood shack in fucking Arkansas or whatever, like some shithole southern state, and some dude will still have a fucking Confederate flag flying out there. And so I feel like I don't. This is just a tough one. Do I put it at number 3? I'm looking at the rest of the list here, and I'm thinking it might have to go at it might go at number. Oh, this is tough, right? I'm thinking about putting World War One at number at number 6, and then putting the Civil War at number 4. I think that's the current, thought I have in my head. But for now, we're still not fully through the list. And I didn't talk about the Civil War as much, but that's just because there's not as much to talk about there. Like it's an old school war. It's we won it. It's There's nothing too interesting about it, but it's just very iconic and it has the aesthetics, right? Like the fucking Union North and the Confederate flag is very sick. And then you have like John Brown. He was running around Kansas with like a sword chopping people's heads off. It's aesthetically a very pleasing war, but there's just, it's not like Vietnam where you can watch combat footage from it or whatever. It's just like you kind of have to take people on their word. You kind of have to be like, is rickety Jim Cricket from fucking Springfield, Missouri, lying about John Brown running around chopping people's head off with a sword. Like, I don't know. And so I think for that reason, we're going to have to put it at number 3 for now. And then we have Iraq. And I don't know how many wars I have here, but I think I'm going to skip past Iraq because I think it's going to go in last place. And then we have Afghanistan right after Iraq. And Afghanistan does go above Iraq just because the Taliban and like the region it was fought in, right? Like they call Afghanistan the fucking graveyard of empires. How sick, like how sick is that fucking name, right? Like it's filled with mountains, and I think the national animal of Afghanistan is a fucking snow leopard. It's so much sicker than Iraq. Like Iraq is like, yeah, Iraq is kind of like Ukraine, right? Where it's so many people have like fought and died over that land, but that's just because it's like good for farming, right? It's not like Afghanistan where it's filled with like these huge fucking mountains and dudes with AKs riding snow leopards and shit, you know what I mean? Like Afghanistan is almost like Far Cry 4. It's so sick. And so I think for now we're going to skip Iraq and put Afghanistan. I think I'm going to put the Korean War at number 6, and then we're going to put Afghanistan at number 5 just because of and it did get gay there where it was just like just trying to sniff out IEDs and destroy them, but for a while there Afghanistan was pretty sick. It's a 20-year long war. All right, there's going to be some sickness in there, you know what I mean? There's going to be like SEAL Team 6 coming out of a fucking helicopter, executing a bunch of people in 10 minutes and then going back. And then there's that movie 12 Strong with Chris Hemsworth, which I think is just like complete fiction, but they like rode on horses to like go fuck up the Taliban. I don't know. It's very sick. And then we have the Gulf War, which I don't know if this counts, right? It's kind of like Grenada. I think Grenada in the end will end up ranking higher than the Gulf War just because the aesthetics of it are very pleasing, right? Like I said, it has a Vietnam type of aesthetic to it. It's very, it's kind of old school like that. It wasn't like super supported by the American people. Like they were like, I don't give a fuck about Grenada. But it is kind of like the Gulf War. It's very short, and we completely fucked up the enemy. And so I think we're going to move that past that for now, and then we're going to talk about the Revolutionary War here. And this is it's really all we got out of the Revolutionary War was the movie Patriot, starring Mel Gibson and Heath Ledger. That's I don't care whatever the fuck else we got out of the Revolutionary War. And the Revolutionary War does have some of that coolness to it, right? Where it was like the Native Americans were still like had like the long hair and they were still like doing the feathers and shit, and they weren't all like severe alcoholics that lived in trailers in Oklahoma, right? They were still like the old school, like cool Native Americans, and it was like some of the tribes were on the side of the fucking Americans, and some were on the side of the Canadians and the British and shit like that. Oh, and the Revolutionary War also is like some of the first instances of guerrilla warfare. And I want to talk about this in the Revolutionary War for a second. I had this history class 2 years ago in college, and the teacher was asking like, what was unique about the Revolutionary War? Like, what was it the first thing to introduce in terms of warfare? And I was like, oh, it was the first country to fight for independence against the British. She was like, no, that's not the first time it happened. And I was like, I'm pretty sure it was. And then I looked it up, and it fucking was. I was so fucking. I was like, it was the first colony to be freed from the British to fight for independence against the British. She was like, nope, no, it wasn't. I was just, you fucking bitch, dude. I was so pissed off at her. And she was the real answer she was looking for was guerrilla warfare. And I was like, well, this probably wasn't the first instance of guerrilla war. Maybe on like a large scale like that, like maybe proving that it can be used to fight off an empire, but like it definitely wasn't the first instance of guerrilla warfare. And it's like I said, it's just there's nothing super aesthetically pleasing about it, right? It's not like the Korean War where it's like jet dog fights in the fucking air and shit and like the Incheon landing and stuff like that. Like it was mostly just George Washington doing like tactical retreats and the British completely blundering the entire thing, right? And so I was gonna put it at number 7, but I think for now we're gonna put it at number 8, and then we got a major. I'm gonna skip the Mexican American War for a second, and I'm gonna talk about the War of 1812. And this is red, white, and blue. This is Rock Flag and Eagle. This is number. Do we have a number 3 on our list yet? We do. We have the Civil War at number 3. I think we'll put this at number 4 then, because this is just very, very Rock Flag and Eagle. It was like Britain was coming back for round 2. We fucked them up the first time. We showed them what for. We were like, no, you're not going to tax us on our whiskey and shit. We will fuck we will fuck you with the long dick of the law, dude. We'll show you what's up here, dude. We'll have a bald eagle come down, snatch that powdered wig off your head, and I'll fucking slice your throat off with a bayonet, dude. And yeah, the British, their whole claim to fame during this war is that they burned down the White House, and it's like, or the Capitol. I don't even know if it was the White House. I think it was the White House, and it's like, yeah, you burned down a house, dude, right? Like it's just a house. It's a very big house. It's a house where the president lives, but it's still just a house. Like that's all you got here. Like America and Vietnam, we were like, yeah, we can there's still the effects of America and Vietnam to this day. Like there's still Agent Orange babies being born in Vietnam. Like we really left our mark there. It's like, oh, you burned down a wooden house. Good job, Britain. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? Suck your fucking probably crooked dick? Suck your small uncircumcised dick, right? Like I don't give a fuck. And so we're gonna change up the rankings here. And World War I is gonna go at number 5, and then we're gonna have to bump down Afghanistan to number 6, and then Korea to number 7. And so we still got the top 3 is still pretty well established. I think at this point, I don't think anyone's beaten out World War II. I don't think anyone's beaten out Vietnam. I don't think anyone's beaten out the Civil War that we have left. Yeah, it's the wars we have left are Iraq, the Gulf War, the Mexican American War, and Grenada. And I think I can pretty firmly say, sorry, this is a tough one. I think this is where some debates kind of start. I'm debating where the Gulf War goes here. It might be number 9. It's either the Gulf War is number 9 or the Mexican American War is number 9. And let's talk about the positives of the Gulf War. It was very short, right? Like we destroyed the 4th largest military in a week, or however the fuck long it took us. Like 300 Americans died over the course of it, and we completely fucked them up. The point against it is that it wasn't really the 4th largest military in the world. Like I've talked about this before. It's like America's number 1, China's kind of number 2, and then from there it doesn't mean anything, right? Like the rankings, it's just, yeah, sure, if fucking Iraq is fighting, Syria or whatever, maybe the rankings come into play a little bit there. But if America's fighting anyone other than China, it doesn't matter, dude. We're going to completely destroy them in like 3 weeks, right? Like America has billion-dollar planes, literally $2 billion planes. Not 2 planes that cost $1 billion, but an individual plane that costs $2 billion that's like basically only supposed to be used in the opening week of a war. That's what the B-2 Spirit is. If you've ever seen, it's like the triangle-shaped plane. They call it a flying wing. And that it's basically just designed for like the opening part of a war, right? Because the thing about those radar cross sections is like, yeah, at first it just looks like a B on a radar, but like if they can understand the cross section of it, then they can like get it down and detect them whenever one comes into their airspace. And so that plane is only meant for like the opening 2 weeks of war. Or maybe not the opening 2 weeks, but for like a very limited time in war. And so that just goes to show that America can fuck anyone up completely. And so I feel like that's a point away from the Gulf War, just because it's like, yeah, we knew we would fuck him up, dude. It's like, what's Saddam Hussein gonna do again? Oh yeah, he's gonna make nukes in 10 years, sure. And that's the ridiculous thing about the American invasion into Iraq, the second one, because that's what the Gulf War was. It was America fucking up Iraq. And then I think Operation Praying Mantis, I'll have to look that up. But Operation Praying Mantis was kind of a similar thing to the Gulf War, where we just like completely destroyed Iran's navy. But I don't know, maybe it was part of the Gulf War. Operation Praying Mantis. Okay, so no, this was 3 years before the Gulf War started. So yeah, I think we're gonna have to put the Mexican American War at number 9, even though I didn't talk about it too much. It's just like that's how we got a lot of our land, and the Mexicans are still salty about it. I don't know if the actual Mexicans are, but like the Mexicans and Americans or the Mexicans in America are still very salty about it. They're like, California used to be part of Mexico. It's like, yeah, now it's not because you guys suck. Because we beat your guys' fucking ass, dude. You guys, I'm pretty sure fucking Mexico lost a war to Texas, dude. You guys lost a war to one fucking state. Don't come at me bitching about how you guys can't win a war. That's not my fault. It's not my fault that you guys suck dick at war, dude. We guys fucked you up and we took California. And California isn't, most people outside of California think it fucking sucks, dude. Most people outside of California, if okay, here's what I want to say about California, dude. If California was in Mexico, Mexico would be a first world country. But to us, it's like, yeah, that's the biggest shithole we have here. It's filled with homeless people and fucking failed tech startups. Like that's, yeah, it's obviously not our biggest shithole, but it's like that's how a lot of Americans, especially in like the Midwest and like the South, that's how they talk about it. And so it's like it's not even our number one state, but it would make you guys a first world country. So suck our dicks, dude. You guys got your asses beat. And so I feel like the Mexican American War goes at number 9. And then I think the Gulf War and Grenada are both battling out for number 10. And I'm going to put Grenada at number 10 just because of the aesthetics of it. And then I'm going to put the Gulf War at number 11. And then Iraq is going to go last at number 12. And so let me read out the rankings real quick. We talked a fair bit about all these wars. We debated a little bit, and and coming in, I knew Grenada was probably going to get an unjust victory just because it's a personal favorite of mine. But I don't know, suck my dick. So number 1 we have World War II. Number 2 we have the Vietnam War. Number 3 we have the Civil War. Number 4 we have the War of 1812. Number 5 we have World War I. Number 6 is Afghanistan. Number 7 is Korea. Number 8 is the Revolutionary War. Number 9 is the Mexican American War. Number 10 is Grenada. Number 11 is the Gulf War. And number 12 is Iraq. I think that's a good list because here's the thing. Either the Revolutionary War or Civil War could be number 3, but I'm not going to put two of like those old school wars, those boring ass fucking, you know what I mean, lining up and shooting people. I'm not going to put two of those in the top 5. It's just not going to happen. And so I feel like the Civil War aesthetically, you know what I mean? Like I said, Stonewall Jackson, uh, John Brown, the Buffalo Soldiers. I feel like that, you know, kind of gives it the one up over the Revolutionary War. And it was also they had sicker guns and stuff. They had like the Gatling gun and shit like that. So I feel like that's a pretty good ranking we got going on here. And maybe I'll write it down. I don't know if anyone cares, dude. Vincent, Luca, if you're still listening at this point, and I know that you're not, fucking let me know if you want me to write it down. But yeah, once again, shout out to those two guys. We're up to 11 followers. I think we're still at 4 rankings, which is fine. I don't care if anyone follows or ranks it or even listens to it. I just enjoy doing this. I'm just an annoying dumb asshole who likes to talk. So, but yeah, shout out to those guys. Up to 11 followers. Got to be pretty happy about that. Vincent, thanks for the explanation, which is very funny. Shout out to Vincent. Shout out to Luca. Both you guys rule. Hard as fuck. And yeah, like I said, I don't know. It kind of feels like a dickhead thing to link Vincent's fucking thing in the comments, but I don't know. I don't know. I'm gonna do it. I'm probably never gonna meet this guy in my entire life. He's a nice guy though, and I think on the off chance that anyone listening to this hasn't, uh, you know, I don't know, fucking likes art or whatever. I don't know. Check it out. But I hope you guys have a good day, good week, good year, good life. Yeah, and I'll see you guys probably tomorrow. I'll probably do current events tomorrow, and I'll see you guys then. All right. What else do I have to say? Nothing. Peace out.